Metallica teach us that your unique personality can lead to improving the lives of millions of people in society. And that's not an exaggeration. In this video we will discuss personality and band dynamics and other psychological phenomenon to describe the success of Metallica. The learnings from this video can be applied to any collective creative endeavour. Metallica are essentially a 50-year longitudinal study in creativity, identity, group dynamics, burnout, reinvention and legacy. If you've been living under a rock, Metallica are the most successful heavy metal band. In their near 50-year career, they have sold over 163 million albums. They have sold over 22 million tickets to shows, grossing over 1.4 billion in performances alone. That doesn't include a show in Russia in 1991 at Monsters of Rock, where there were an unknown number of people in the crowd, but experts believe it's around 1 million. They've played at least 15,000 shows. Today I'm going to analyse the three Metallica eras, what made them uniquely successful, why, and how. Stay to the end of the video for my analysis of Megadeth. First I'm going to give an introduction to Metallica through their first era, which we will call the Cliff Burton years. Then, before I start era 2, which is the Jason Newsted era, I'm going to unpack the personality profiles insofar as what we can deduct from public information of the four band members and how that impacted the band both positively and negatively in terms of their creativity, performance, business, and with their own mental health and social cohesion. Then I will do the same thing for the third era, which we'll call the Rob Trujillo era. Era 1, the Cliff Burton years. Until bassist Cliff Burton's death in 1986 in support of Metallica's third album, Master of Puppets, the band had four core members. Kirk Hammett on lead guitar, Lars Ulrich on drums, James Hetfield on rhythm guitar and vocals, and Cliff on bass. In the early years, Metallica had Dave Mustaine on lead guitar, but it is well documented that Dave and James did not get along. They were both strong personalities who were domineering and controlling. In their own right, they made brilliant music, but in the dynamic of Metallica, it just wasn't working. So Metallica opted to kick out Dave in favour of the quiet and agreeable Kirk Hammett. Kirk has been on record talking about trying to make his ego as small as possible. This really fits in well with a band that already had two strong egos and could not afford a third. Lars Ulrich, the drummer in Metallica, was also a strong personality. It has been widely reported that the band would bring in riffs and James and Lars would take them away and craft them into songs. Lars was more of a visionary, the career mindset person who was driving the band. All of their engagements, including getting them on radio stations, submitting cassette tapes and going overseas to record albums. Lars and James were able to balance their egos healthily as they were complementary. James was incredibly dedicated to becoming a world-class guitarist, vocalist and frontman, whereas Lars was dedicated to taking the ideas of the band and crafting them into the best songs possible. This is a skill Lars possesses that is largely overlooked by the general fan base. During this first era, the four band members were learning a lot from each other. Kirk brought a lot of unique riffs, Cliff brought his unique classical experience, James brought his incredible downpicking, and the band ran with it, largely driven by Lars. They were hungry and they were outsiders. Metalheads at this time were alienated. There were injustices and it was very cutthroat. Anger and outside identities drove Metallica to build something that they would fit into because they didn't fit into the mainstream. It also meant that Metallica had to come together as a cohesive unit, but to do that they had to figure out how to stick together and either embrace or get rid of potentially problematic aspects of their unique personality so that they could work together as a team. There were many fans who also felt like outsiders, and that's why they connected with Metallica. Metallica created a brotherhood. James notably had a very rough upbringing and he wanted to build a family within the band but also with the fans. Now Metallica have cemented themselves as historic titans, and if you are with them, you are part of the Metallica family. So there were four dudes dedicated to success. James was dedicated to his guitar and frontman persona. Kirk had the quirky ideas and was happy to go along for the ride. Cliff was a university-educated classical musician, and Lars was the visionary who brought it all together. There was a shared vision. Even though there was likely friction, particularly around writing, this pushed them to do better and better. They were headed towards total world domination. Era 2. After the tragic death of Cliff Burton, Jason Newsted joined Metallica. Through the Jason Newsted years, a couple really important things happened. James Hetfield cemented himself as the best heavy metal frontman of all time. Jason really pushed the Metallica live performance and was a good presence in his own right, lifting all of them to new high standards. Metallica released the Black Album, which is the most successful metal album of all time. And Metallica adopted their sound and style, opening the Metallica family to a wider audience. This era ended with substantial but necessary conflict for the band to successfully transition into the twilight stage of their career. We're going to talk about why this all worked culturally and career-wise, but first let's unpack the personalities of each member of Metallica. James Hetfield is the driven creator and protector of Metallica. He likely possesses high dominance behaviour, high discipline, emotional intensity, and a very deep sensitivity that is masked by an exterior toughness. James is the engine of Metallica. His identity is Metallica. He is mission-oriented and hyper-committed to the craft. He's emotionally deep but may be slow to trust others, and you see that in the way he treated Jason. James experienced significant trauma in his childhood with the death of his mother and abandonment of his father. Metallica became his family, and it was his way of surviving in the world. He must be creative. Lars Ulrich is the visionary and the strategist. He's likely very open-minded, obviously quite extroverted and ambitious, and I believe he is highly persuasive. You can see this persuasion in the way Metallica was able to make their way up through the ranks to become as successful as they are. It is likely that he was somewhat agreeable so he can bring together the different opinions of the band and drive it in a direction, and the opinions of those who the band wishes to work with. This would have been significant during the 90s when Metallica shifted from an underground titan to a global phenomenon. They had to work with external producer Bob Rock and collaborate with organisations like MTV, the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, as well as movie companies. Lars is almost like the CEO of Metallica. Without him, Metallica would have never become a global institution. Legendary underground perhaps, but never this big. Kirk Hammett is a very sensitive, intuitive person. Extremely open-minded, sensitive and imaginative, he is quite creatively intelligent. He balances out Lars and James by his low ego drive. He's based in feelings rather than thinking and chases emotion over perfection. He's guided by instinct, mood and atmosphere. Kirk is here for the vibes. He is the soul of Metallica. Jason Newsted was a devoted warrior of Metallica. Extremely loyal, extremely energetic and intense, he was a welcomed presence in Metallica for their live shows. He also had a high need for belonging, and music was his everything. He bled for the band, and he took the abuse of band members to stay, to contribute to something greater than himself. Metallica benefited significantly from the contributions of James, and at the time it appears to have largely been underappreciated by the other members of the band. Jason wanted to belong more than he wanted recognition. He expected loyalty, but his tragedy was that his devotion was stronger than the rest of the band would let in by him, and eventually he decided that he needed to do something on his own. This era of Metallica worked through ruthless determination to be the best and lots of ego clashes. Producer Bob Rock was able to masterfully present 3 Metallica albums in a way that pushed them into stardom. The Black Album, otherwise known as the self-titled Metallica album, Load and Reload, firmly cemented them in rock fame. Then, with the S&M concert with the San Francisco Orchestra, a song in Mission Impossible and MTV fame, creatively and culturally they were at an all-time high. Jason brought a lot of new ideas to the band, and James and Lars had a refined approach to songwriting, along with a maturity in their own riffs combined with Kirk's quirky contributions. All of this kept one foot in metal and one foot into rock. Ultimately, the cost of emotional suppression in the likely masculine and ego-driven culture and significant fame led Metallica to break down and take a year off. There was a creative stagnation and significant conflict in the band that had built up over years. Part of this was that James and Lars never truly grieved the loss of Cliff and took it out on Jason. Jason was bullied. This time wouldn't have been good for Kirk either, but his distinct personality, values and motives meant that he was able to see himself through these tough years, like a surfer riding a wave. James, Lars and Kirk all started families, and there was tension between family life and the identity fusion of the band within its members. Jason was different. Jason didn't have a family. He decided to dedicate himself to Metallica. But during this change, Jason needed to do more, so he started his own project, and ultimately that wasn't okay. James ended up going to rehab for alcohol abuse, and during the documentary Some Kind of Monster, we learned that the frontman persona James had put on initially as a protective mechanism had fused to his identity. It is something he would continue to try and tackle to this day. Ultimately, this era ended with substantial but necessary conflict for the band to successfully transition into their twilight state of their career. They pushed it as far and as wide as they could, both in creativity and in business. It's likely that they would not have been able to continue down that path and produce anything greater than before. This era was filled by ruthless determination, maturity in songwriting, and pursuing something wider and deeper than metal. Leveraging Jason and Bob Rock's unique creativity and their ability along with Kirk's to survive through conflict is really what glued them together through these years, but it went on as long as it possibly could have. Jason, as does Bob Rock, both leave behind a legacy that includes the best live performance era of Metallica and their most commercial success. At this point, they could have quit, but they didn't, and what they've managed to pull off since then is actually quite remarkable. Now, they are reaping the rewards of a comeback built on stability. And so with that, on to Era 3. The third era of Metallica, which is the current era, begins with the introduction of new bassist Robert Trujillo. Personality-wise, Rob is similar to Kirk. He's low in ego drive, highly emotionally regulated, very professional, incredibly virtuosic, and very humble. He is the perfect member to slot in amongst James and Lars, and gets on quite well with Kirk. Rob is calm, balanced, and consistent, yet he brings new musicality to the band too. He's a stabilizer. He keeps Metallica on track. He is the perfect member to keep Metallica around for a long time. Metallica needed to reinvent themselves again, but this time it was about balancing who they had become along with who they were before in the beginning, their roots. They stayed relevant that way. Metallica risked alienating fans to evolve, but they managed to pull it off with their next release, Death Magnetic. It was the perfect balance of new and old Metallica, reigniting faith in the band. Since then, Metallica have been doing what they love and do best. There is no need or expectation to create anything more profound than the first 5 albums. Fans are largely just happy to see them around. Metallica are well and truly into legacy building mode. They are mentors and have a newfound calling. Ambition has been replaced with purpose. Metallica is now an institution. They have moved from purely a musical act to a group that now donates significantly to charity and operates a career development pathway for poor communities. So what can Metallica teach us about every creative collaboration? Well, firstly, they teach us that your unique individual creativity can lead to improving the lives of millions of people. They have done this not only literally through their career development program and donations, but through the emotional impact of their music. I'm confident that fans of Metallica have flourished or survived in their lives in no small part due to the impact Metallica had on them. In terms of the band members themselves and Metallica as a job, Metallica teaches us how to build creative resilience, how to survive rejection and criticism, how to avoid burnout, and most critically, they tell us how to involve. Metallica worked because they had an ecosystem that, despite the issues, was actually well balanced between the members. There was vision, discipline, emotional depth, stability, and raw fire. On top of that, it was always connected to a higher purpose, and that purpose was and continues to be family. Every creative project that is destined for greatness has this mixture, but in each project the mixture looks different. This is true for all forms of creativity, including individual acts. So reflect on your favourite creative groups, as well as on what your ideal creative collaboration might look like. Who would you be? In art, you need someone to have a dream, someone to build and fight, someone to feel, and someone to stabilise the whole thing out. So reflect on yourself and those that you work with. If you're in a band or in any creative project, understanding your personality, your strengths and your areas for improvement will go a long way on your road to success. Now, what about Megadeth? How many musicians have actually been in Megadeth over their 40-year career? I've counted 25, with at least 15 well-documented internal conflicts between the bands. Now, who does Megadeth blame for their success not reaching Metallica's? Well, that's self-explanatory. We can contrast Metallica to Megadeth in many ways, but purely based off band dynamics alone, you can understand why some bands are able to think outwardly and strategically into the future, and why some continue to argue amongst themselves internally. If you're a creative that's interested in understanding your own unique personality and what your strengths are, get in touch for coaching. Also, if you're a part of a collective creative endeavour such as a band, and you're interested in group dynamic coaching, also get in touch. Places are extremely limited. I'm very busy but very keen to work with who I can. G'day pursuers of creativity. If you like that video, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe to be part of a community encouraging creativity for health, well-being and improving society. Also, if you need help getting out of a rut or writer's block, you might like my brand new Creative Sparks tool. There are 10 free simple prompts or 50 in the premium version, both of which can be found at my website. Click the link in the description. Or head to my YouTube channel where you can watch my course titled Learn to Access Your Creativity Easily with Creative Sparks, where I go through each of the 10 free sparks in more detail and include some examples. Ciao. Yeah!